We often hear of children being abandoned every single day, be it in toilets, dustbins, or even neglected in parks. Many of these little souls are left parentless, and most end up being taken into children's homes. Despite this increase in children living without parents or orphaned, research done by the National Adoption Coalition of South Africa, that's NACSA, reveals a steep decline in the number of adoptions in South Africa in the past 10 years. Dee Blackie is a consultant at NACSA. She's joining us in the studio to tell us a little bit more. Dee, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thanks for having me.
This is, I suppose, a very disturbing interview and topic, but a real one. What constitutes this growing crisis in child abandonment and adoption rates in South Africa?
Well, there's a number of reasons why children are being abandoned. A lot of it has to do with poverty, with urbanization, with challenges around women falling pregnant and being abandoned by their families, by their partners. But I did a lot of research around the issue, and one of the big challenges is people's beliefs around adoption in this country. So adoption is not seen as a solution, an ideal solution for children in this country, and that's reflected in many of the actions taken by our Department of Social Development. And the rather confusing thing is that the department says that they support adoption, and adoption is certainly in our Act and it's in our constitutional rights that children should grow up in families. But unfortunately what we see is this year we had just under 1,004 or just over 1,400 adoptions taking place, and 10 years ago we had 2,500. Yet our abandonment figures continue to increase. So what we've got is a problem that's increasing, and a solution, which is adoption, is decreasing.
Okay, let's just dig a little bit deeper as to why. Is perhaps, and I've heard it from a few people, that the adoption process is a difficult process in itself. Is that one of the reasons, or not necessarily?
It's certainly one of the reasons that's cited frequently. We have a new Children's Act, but it's not that new. So the Children's Act was constituted in 2005, which was introduced in 2010. So we've had this new act for 5 years, and one would think that the Department of Social Development and the courts would be familiar with the implementation of the act now. It's actually an excellent piece of legislation, and it's designed to make sure that the best possible interests of the child are met in that process of adoption. But unfortunately, in practice, we're not seeing that. So adoptions that should take a few months to do are taking 2 years to do. Documents that should be delivered from the MEC of Social Development in particular provinces that should take 10 days to a month to deliver are taking up to 2 years. And that says to me that although government says that they want to make adoption more accessible, all of the delays taking place in adoption currently are coming from the Department of Social Development and from the courts. So there's definitely a challenge. And when people ask what is the challenge, the one issue is cited is the issue of the Act and the implementation of the Act. But the other issue is this issue of our belief systems and our culture. And I did quite a bit of research around this. I did my master's degree in anthropology looking at child abandonment and adoption in the context of ancestral beliefs. And there certainly is a dominant belief that if you take a child of unknown ancestry and introduce them into a family, you might be causing problems for both the child and for the family that the child is introduced to. Now, interestingly, I spent a lot of time talking to traditional healers, traditional leaders, sangomas, and most of them believe that if you consult with your ancestors, if you engage with them in an open and honest way, there are a number of things that you can do to introduce a family into a child into a new family. There's rituals like ubigile where you actually introduce a child. So, I mean, in my experience, more and more people are coming forward wanting to adopt. More and more traditional leaders and healers and sangomas are open to adoption and looking at ways because of our growing crisis. But the one problem at the moment is the Department of Social Development, who really aren't actively supporting adoption. They say they are, but their actions would speak a completely different language.
Which doesn't help the process at all, because at the end of the day, you've got these little children who are the ones that are suffering most of all. Let's have a look at some of the research, if we can do this very, very quickly, just running to the end of the program. It shows that that of the 428 unmatched children available for adoption, about 98 92% of them are black.
Yes.
And this is a significantly high number. Let's break it into races. Why do we find that there are more black children up for adoption, or is it just the nature of the population?
You know, I think it's just how many children are available for adoption are related to our demographics of the country.
Indeed.
So you know, the majority of our country are black. The small proportion of our country are white. The problem is when you look at who's wanting to adopt.
Yes, and I see this.
Yeah, the majority of parents who want to adopt are in fact white.
Yeah.
And it's because many of the parents who want to adopt who are black are facing a lot of challenges from their families. Their families are saying to them, you know, where did you find this child? This child is not part of our family. This child doesn't belong to our family. So I mean, in many cases, families will actually go and pretend that they're pregnant, come home with a baby, you know, many months later, and say this is our baby. The problem is, as part of my research, I also spoke to many young children or not young children, adults who had discovered on becoming an adult that they were in fact adopted, had then returned to their social worker to say, who are my family? Who is my biological family? This is really important for me. It's important for the rituals that I want to, you know, I want to marry someone. I want to pay damages for a child. I've graduated. I want to thank my ancestors. There's a whole bunch of things that I want to do, and I need to know who my biological family are, specifically my father's family name. And they get told, I'm afraid you got found on the corner of Sawa and Fox Streets in the middle of town, or you got left in a taxi rank, or we found you wandering in a rubbish heap outside Soweto. So, you know, and it's absolutely devastating for these children.
Yeah.
And yet adoption that's done properly, these children would absolutely have access to who their family was.
Yeah.
You know, the whole process with cultural beliefs is you need to be open and honest. You need to be clear on who you are and where you come from. And the problem is at the moment is that no one's prepared to do that.
Let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for opening our eyes to all of this and the research that's been done. Dee Blackie is a consultant at the National Adoption Coalition of South Africa. If you found this conversation interesting, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know at Morning Live, SABC. Quick break and then a shop to our SABC team.